Welcome back. Well, from those POS rates you saw before now, we're getting reports that those prices are coming down, gradually. So we're seeing, some of these POS operators, starting to, bring the prices down. But we know that some of the ATMs are still not, dispensing cash, at this time. But you can always tell us your experience out there with the POS operators and with the ATMs. All right, let's head straight to the markets now. We have Ini again with the details on what's happening with these markets. And we're seeing the NGX marginally down at intraday. Not so bad.
Not so bad,
100K
but down
looking
anyways, 0.06.
Yeah.
Well, not so bad, of course, but it's in the red, and we hope for a recovery before the close of
Yeah, definitely at this point, because 100K is looking shaky.
No, 100K, it's okay, because you have 980.
Yeah.
But I mean...
But in one move, that could be wiped out. But let's see.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the market segment of Business Incorporated. And of course, we're starting with the NGX, where we see a drop in the all share from the 102,000, above 102,000 that we closed with yesterday. Monday, we see it down to 101,000, even though it's still looking strong at 102. But I mean, any little move and then we're far away from 101,000. Yesterday, the market gained more than 100 billion naira, a good move right there, but we need to solidify on it, or else we'll have our investors running back to the fixed income market. The South Africa JSE is, however, in the green at intraday 0.12% at 73,809.63. That's obviously for intraday. We go to the Egypt EJX, and it's also positive, very solid right there. Well, solid 0.54% at 28,649.77. Kenya, we always have the previous day closed at positive 0.14%, but lower than that 100 index points, which has been like a settlement point for them for some time. Before we go to other numbers, let's stay with the Nigerian market. This morning, we talked about Access Co. We know that yesterday it was negative, but at early this morning, when we had that conversation during business morning, the trader that spoke to us said there's a bit of recovery. Now, let's find out what's driving that red that we saw with the NGX, with Afolabi Benro. He's an equity trader with Stanbic IBTC. Hi, Mr. Benro. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Nini. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, good to have you. So, what's responsible for the red we see? It's marginal, but if we're not careful, we could lose our 101,000. Well, who are those who are experiencing profit taking at this time?
So, it's mostly local investors. I think one of the major drivers of this has been we saw from last week the increase in the participation in the T-bill market, where the 1 year closed at 19%. So this has caused equity investors to basically start looking more towards the T-bill space in terms of investments. So profit taking is likely still coming from local investors. We're seeing more names come off during trading today. The banking sector is being hit. Some other sectors are also being hit as well. So we expect to probably continue to see this towards to the end of the session today.
Okay, but could you tell us the stocks that are being looked at? Because we saw a recovery yesterday, so we're hoping it to be sustained. But can we look at some of the stocks at this time? And we're particularly interested in the Access Co, of course, with the stories around it, what has happened, the unfortunate incident, and then we have a new acting CEO now. We saw a bit of recovery this morning. What's going on around those?
So currently, Access Holdings is currently down about 0.65%. Still very marginal, and volumes traded there is just about 4 million shares that has traded so far. So it's a very quiet day if you look at the average that Access Co usually trades. On a normal day, we'll be looking towards maybe about 20 million shares thereabouts on a good day for Access Co. So it's still very quiet, and I think this is largely in line with the rest of the markets. Volumes are generally low across the banking sector. So the likes of GTCO, just about 6 million shares have traded. UBA, just about 40 million shares have traded. So it's a very, very quiet session so far today, not necessarily isolated to just Access Co.
So I thought that the drop in yields in the fixed income space would bring investors back to the NGX, but it looks like it might take a little bit of time before we start seeing that.
Yeah, and I think, the market has also had a very strong run so far this year. So what we're seeing is the correction of that, profit taking setting in. I mean, the next catalyst and the next trigger we're looking at is that we're running into corporate action season, where we'll start to see maybe dividends being paid. We're expecting that this could potentially be the next trigger for the equity markets, where we might start seeing some investors start to maybe invest back into the market. This has been a trigger over the past couple of years, and we expect that this might likely be another trigger again for this year.
But it doesn't look like the result that has been released is having a lot of impact on investor sentiment.
A lot of it has been priced in, but what's usually is the trigger is the corporate action. So when a dividend is announced, that's usually what gets investors excited. So the results that we've seen so far is unaudited results, and with those we don't see any declarations of dividends yet. So investors usually get excited when you start to see dividends being paid. That's when I think we'll probably start to see some action.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Gbenro, Afolabi Gbenro, equity trader with Stanbic IBTC Stockbrokers.
Thank you.
All right, so still staying in Nigeria. Today, the Central Bank of Nigeria intervened in the market, and banks like Zenith Bank, Stanbic, Fidelity, Keystone, they sold as they bought from the CBN. These banks bought about $5 million to each of those banks mentioned, and the rate was between 1,490 and 1,499. That is the rate which these banks bought from CBN. So we expect that the FX space should be flooded, even if it's just for today and tomorrow, and we should see that reflect at the close of trade today in the value of the naira. Even though I do wonder that if the banks will buy, FX at this rate, 1,440 and 1,499 from the CBN, how much would they sell it for? So, of course, the price of the naira is also affected by this. So even though there's liquidity in the market, but the price at which the banks acquire this liquidity is also important, But we'll see if Vladi has the answer to that very soon. Let's go to the Middle East, see how that's doing at intraday for the Middle East market. We can see that Abu Dhabi is in the green, 0.20%. At 9,343.02. Dubai is, however, very marginal. I guess we can look over this one. Perhaps at the close of trade, it would have recovered at 4,210.69. Saudi Arabia, on the other side, is positive, more than 0.5%, 0.56 at 12,365.29. Qatar, almost that, 0.49% at 10,093.19. We move to Asia now. Japan's Nikkei 225 reached the 38,000, and this is the first time in, I think, 34 years. That's what has happened in Asian market. It's a brief that they have a holiday there, so it's not a full market. But of course, the Nikkei 225 looking really good right there. 2.89% dropped a bit, but crossed 38,000 at some point and then came back. And it's the first time since the asset bust in 1990. Been a while, Kospi is also in the green, 1.12% at 2,649.64. Hang Seng Index is on the flip side, really low, right there, 0.83%. Other Asia Pacific, mostly more markets return to the trade after that holiday, including South Korea and Singapore. Shanghai is in the green, 1.28% at 2,865.90. And then Australia is in the red, 0.15%. That's what we have for the Asian market. From there, we go to the United States, looking at the features right there, a red board that we have for the features, 0.16% down. That's what Dow Jones has as investors prepared for key inflation. We expect the inflation number from the United States, and we know data drives the U.S. economy, so investors are always looking out for that. 38,822. The S&P 500 also in the red, 0.34%, 5,024. The Nasdaq, the tech guys, 0.58%. We do know that if inflation looks good, that means that if it's still high, then we know that the Fed might start cutting rates earlier. But if it drops, then that rate cut is not coming so soon. So, of course, investors will have to, if they don't cut the rates, borrowing is still expensive, investors run away from that. So that's why we see this anticipation, waiting by the investors. As we said, headline inflation is expected to have increased 0.2% month over month and 2.9% from a year earlier. That's according to Economist poll right there in the US. So, Ladi, it's a waiting game for the United States investors.
Yeah.
They're waiting to see those numbers. And it's not like Nigeria where, the data is one way, inflation is this way, and the market is one way.
Yeah.
Over there, things align. So if inflation is looking scary and the Fed does not cut rates, then
I hope we don't have to be worried, seeing that the futures market is already tending suddenly, in the red at this time.
Yeah.
Are they already seeing something?
Maybe they're hearing, some investors have their ears close to the ground. So,
because if inflation comes in hotter than expected, that means rate cut bets are off for the longest time in the US.
I think they said they were going to start in March. Might just push it to...
They're already pushing it, way ahead, pushing the can.
Maybe. I'm sure there's news going on somewhere.
Yeah.
Anyway,
we'll get that later on, and we'll see how it impacts the market. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Lodi, I talked about the CBN intervention today in the market.
Exactly.
It will be interesting to see how much impact that will have. But even as I mentioned, the rate at which the banks acquire this FX from...
Yeah, CBN selling at about 1,490. Yeah.
1,490 to 1,499. So how much do you expect the commercial banks to now...
actually sell for? Because at the end of the day, I know the CBN is doing everything it can, to strengthen the Naira. But I think at this point, they're just looking at liquidity. Creating that liquidity for now. So let's hope that somehow
over time we will look at price.
Exactly, because I need the Naira to strengthen. I cannot take another
Ladi, the CBN governor has told you and your government officials, reduce your demand for imported clothes, food, and everything.
I'm trying to cut my demand here. I'm cutting my demand. I hope I can cut more.
Okay. I wish you the best, Ladi. I wish you the best.
Yes, buy Nigeria at this point. Thank you so much, Eddie.